here, Allie, to provide our translation tonight. That's really important to us as an organization, that we can be accessible to many populations. So we're happy to have you here with us tonight. And as our message just pointed out, this evening is being recorded, this program. So thank you for that. My name is Jillian, and I am a library assistant at the Council Tree branch of Poudre River Public Library District. I'd also like to introduce our teen services librarian, or one of them, Jenny Thurman. She's with us today as well.
Hello.
So Jenny will be monitoring our chats today and trying to check for questions. And as you will see in a moment, I'll explain in just a minute how we're going to kind of run the evening. But first, we're super excited to have you with us today. This is our first crash course for the college bound. And we have several panelists who I'll introduce in just a moment. While starting college is a really exciting time, it can also be one that feels really overwhelming or comes with challenges, sometimes unexpected challenges. And we're hoping that our attendees today will come away from tonight's program feeling confident that they can tackle the challenges that they encounter, know what resources are available to them and how to seek them out, and feel less alone or ashamed if and when they encounter any experience any bumps in this transition, because it is a significant one in a person's life. We'll have some lighter moments to talk about dorm essentials and things of that nature as well. So without further ado, I will go through just a couple Zoom etiquette things. First, please keep your audio on mute. If you're an attendee and you don't have a question at that time, it'll just make it easier to hear everybody that is speaking. If you have questions, please feel free to put them either in the chat or use the raise hand function, which should be under the reactions down along the bottom of your screen, whichever feels comfortable to you. At some point, as our participants will be getting their dinner delivered, so feel free to pop away to get your pizza as that comes in. And without that, I will introduce our panelists and let them say a brief blurb about themselves, and then we'll get going. So first, we have Allie. Allie is a student success coach from Purdue University, and she did finish her growing up years in Fort Collins and was a graduate from one of our local high schools. So Allie, if you want to say a quick hello and tell participants about yourself.
Yes, hi everyone. Like Jillian said, my name is Allie Stubbs. I am a student success coach at Purdue University in Indiana. So my role is basically to help students adjust to college, to figure out how to navigate the academics, the social side, all of the challenges and all of the exciting things that come along with starting college. My job is to help make that transition as easy and as smooth as possible for students. So I'm so excited to be here. And like Jillian said, if you have any questions, please let us know.
Thanks, Allie. Next, we have Ferd. Ferd is a student, a current rising sophomore, and I will let him tell you all a little bit more about himself. You can share like what year you are, which I already did, where you go to school, how far away from home you are, things like that.
Yeah, of course. Well, hello, everyone. As Jillian said, my name is I am a rising second year at Northwestern. Around a 3-hour flight or a 12-hour drive from that's sort of the difference between where I go to school versus where I live. And yeah, I'm a theater major at Northwestern. I do a lot of improv comedy on campus. And I also took a gap year last year, which is another really cool thing. Yeah, very excited to be here.
Thank you, Ferd. And last college student we have with us today on our panel is Riley. And Riley, I will let you share about yourself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight. My name's Riley. I'm also a rising sophomore at Northwestern. I'm a double major. I study both theater and English, although I did just declare my English major, so I'm not too far into that yet. But yeah, I grew up in Fort Collins. But yeah, I'm super happy to be here.
Okay, great. Thank you, Riley. So if our attendees are interested in telling us either out loud or in the chat a little bit about where they're headed to college, like if they're going far away, if they're staying close, how you feel about it. Are you super excited? Are you a little bit nervous? Are you a mixture of both? And also maybe the size of the school that you're going to. I know the panelists today are from what I would consider a mid-size university. Allie is at Purdue, which is a larger public university, I believe. So we've got a little bit of a mix in the panel of experiences there. So if you're comfortable, feel free to share that. And I think we'll get going. All right. Okay. So Allie, I'm going to start with you. And if we go ahead and spotlight Allie, Riley, and Ferd actually at this point so that they're on the screen. Can you talk about what some of the common challenges that you've observed in your role as a student success coach?
Absolutely. I will say every single student has a little bit of a different transition to college and a different journey through college, but there are definitely things that we see pretty consistently in our students. One of the biggest things is for most college students, this is the first time that they are truly independent. And that is amazing and so exciting and also a little bit terrifying. So for a lot of students, that moment when you realize that no one is going to be checking to see that you set an alarm for the next day, no one's going to be checking to see that you ate lunch, all these little things are now on you for the first time. A lot of students find that that is, again, both exciting and a little bit scary sometimes. There is also sometimes a challenge for students with accessing resources. So college campuses have so many resources available, but generally those resources aren't going to come to you. You have to go find them. So one challenge is knowing just what are those resources, as well as how do you get connected to them. So that's something I work with a lot with my students, and something that we encourage them to do is be really proactive in finding the resources and connecting to the people who can help them like throughout their entire time in college. There is also a big challenge adjusting to the schedule and the routine. So high school is pretty much, you're going from class to class to class to lunch to class, and it's fairly similar every single day. Your college schedule is likely going to look a lot different than that. And for some students, that can be challenging because you might only have 2 hours of class a day. It's very easy to see that schedule and think, I have 22 hours of freedom. Let me go take a 10-hour nap, which sounds amazing. But it's really important to know that in college, a lot more of the work is on you. A lot more happens outside of class. And some students struggle at the beginning to understand that just because they aren't physically in class doesn't mean they don't have things to do. That's usually the biggest academic challenge that I hear from my students. And then the last one, I would say it's pretty common, especially at first, to feel like you have to have everything figured out right away. A lot of students, either from themselves, from family, from friends, feel a huge amount of pressure to come in the first day of their first year, knowing exactly what the rest of their life is supposed to look like. And that's a ton of pressure to put on anybody. So a lot of people almost panic a little bit if they don't know exactly what they want to do. That's a huge challenge we see, and something that we really encourage our students to do is just take a breath and embrace the fact that you don't know, and you're not supposed to know from day one. That part of college is getting this chance to explore and to try different things. And you might cross 20 things off of your to-do list before you get one that sticks. And that's totally okay. So trying to really enjoy the journey instead of putting pressure on yourself to have everything figured out from day one. Those are some of the consistent across the board challenges that we tend to see.
Thanks, Allie. I'm going to circle back to that second one that you mentioned. What resources do you think that students should maybe proactively know how to find at their specific university?
Good question. Like I mentioned, there are so many resources that it can sometimes be a little bit overwhelming trying to figure out where to even start. I would say one of the best things you can do, this might sound pretty obvious, but spend some time on the college or the university's website. Those are absolute gold mines of information. So you will be able to learn so much. You can find maps of the campus, links to all of the departments, all of the services on campus. You can learn so much from spending a little bit of time on that website. So that would be my stop one to start getting comfortable. There are also some people in particular that are going to be your new best friends. So you will have an academic advisor, and their job is to help you navigate the classes, because sometimes it can be a little bit complicated trying to figure out what classes to take, when to take them, and you're not supposed to know all the answers. So your advisor's job is to help you through that process. So definitely the more proactive you can be in letting them know what you're interested in, what your goals are, they can then help you a lot more effectively. Also, regardless of the size of the school, my undergrad had 1,400 students, and now I work at Purdue, which has about 40,000. And both of those schools had a lot of student support services that are designed to make your life easier. So typically there will be programs like peer mentoring is a very, very common one. A lot of times there will be programs that pair you with either alumni, with faculty, with people that are in fields that you might be interested in. And that can be so beneficial to help you start navigating some of the things like, what if I want to do an internship, or what steps do I need to take? What classes do I need to take for a certain career? So those are very beneficial resources as well. And then the last one I would highlight, I'm gonna imagine talk more about mental health later on, but that is a very important thing to protect as a college student. So one of the first resources I would seek out is whatever your schools, it might be counseling, psychological services. Most schools will have something or will have partnerships with the local community. Those are very important to be aware of. Even if you're not sure if you're going to need to take advantage of those, it's so helpful to know that they exist, to know how to access them and where to access them. And I would say same thing for physical health. So know where to find the student health center, what resources are available. The more you can have those things figured out before you arrive on campus, the easier it's going to be if and when something does come up. So those are the places that I would start. And again, part of those resources jobs is to then connect you with others. So there is a lot of support. It's just your job to find the right people to help you then get connected to everyone that you need.
Thank you, Allie. I appreciate that. Riley and Ferd, I'll turn to you. So as Allie said earlier, college requires students to really advocate for themselves. And that's something that can feel maybe daunting and you haven't done as much in high school. You really have to take initiative and asking for help and solving problems, possibly especially at a larger university, just because there's more to sort through. Can you talk about how you have approached that in your first year and maybe share an example of a time that you had to advocate for yourself?
I can start us off. So yeah, I think that like at a school like Northwestern, there are just like so many resources, but Ali phrased it very nicely. It's a matter of not necessarily there being the resources, but you finding them and seeking out the ones that will best suit you and that you need. Because one of the hard things about college is, you know, you have to be your biggest advocate. So no one else is going to advocate for you necessarily. So it's a matter of you finding those resources that are there so that the university can then help you. So for example, when I was trying to declare my second major, my academic advisor, unfortunately, wasn't very well versed beyond just the theater realm. So he was mostly familiar with, you know, theater classes and that kind of advising. But when I wanted to declare a second major, I learned that I kind of had to kind of explore the website and do some research on my own to get that sorted out. And so for me, that was a matter of, you know, finding different contacts online, reaching out to people that I saw listed there and professors. And from there, I was able to get set up with declaring my second major. And I'm sure that, you know, other people have had similar experiences with that. And it really is just a matter of, you know, sending an email if you're confused. Chances are, if you send an email, someone's going to, if they don't have the answers for you, they can at least connect you to someone else who will. And that's always been super helpful in my experience.
Yeah, totally. I think that at least in this past first year, a rule that I've sort of adopted for myself is that like, if I find that I'm having a problem or if I find that I just need like some extra help with something, I always like try and challenge myself to like at least tell one person. So like, even if that one person is like one of my friends, or that one person is my academic advisor, or if that one person is like literally just my dad, the process of just like sort of vocalizing whatever issue that I'm having, usually in like the process of vocalizing that, that like one relieves a bit of the stress of like the act of having that issue, and also just like one lowers the stakes of everything a little bit. I find that like often in being able to just sort of talk about whatever is going on with another person and just engaging in that conversation, it does act as a means of just like lowering the stakes of whatever's happening. And then also I think that like when it comes to asking for help, like specifically even like academic help, or asking for like, for example, even an extension on perhaps a paper, something that's been really helpful for me is learning sort of the learning like sort of the practice of being able to, I know I have an assignment that's due in a few weeks, and I can already tell that like I might need some extra time on that assignment, even a week in advance. Being able to just reach out and vocalize that to my professor, that has always proven to be really, really helpful, not only for me, but for also my professor, just to know, just so they know where I'm coming from. And at least at that point in the semester, for help or even locating resources.
Thank you, Ferd. You were cutting out just a little bit, but I think basically if I caught the gist of what you were saying is if you are needing help with an assignment or like running late on an assignment or need more time, to reach out to your professor, and you've done that and it's been helpful to have them know where you're coming from.
Yes, that was perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make sure everyone caught that because that's really important. And I love that you pointed out not to be afraid to reach out to your teachers and professors because that can feel very intimidating. Moving on to a different topic for a moment, talking about roommates. If you are moving into a dorm situation, a lot of people have never had to share a room, for example, and they're experiencing that for the first time. So can you talk about how you got along with your roommate, how you navigated any conflicts, I guess, if you had any, so that you could have a positive relationship with your roommate?
Yeah, I can go ahead and speak on this. So I decided to go random with my roommate. I know that some schools will let you either choose a roommate or you can choose to go random. And I did decide to go random. And I had a pretty positive relationship with my roommate, although I will say that we weren't particularly close. But you know, I think one thing is that we just did have very different living styles. But the key to maintaining that positive relationship, even with such different lifestyles, was really just communication and also just being forgiving. I think it's important when you're being a roommate, just to understand that first of all, no one's a perfect roommate, and I'm sure that there are things that maybe your roommate does to annoy you, but for everything that they do that maybe annoys you, you probably do something that annoys them too. So it's also just coming in with that open mind of like being willing to communicate, keep your mind open, and also just be forgiving. And so even though my roommate, you know, we had very different sleeping schedules, for example, and I remember that was kind of an adjustment for me at the beginning of the year, you know, trying to be respectful, not to wake her up, and vice versa. And it is just something that you kind of have to communicate about, but if you're both open-minded about it and you're both willing to just be kind first and foremost, then it's nothing that you can't work through.
Yeah, I really have to bump on everything Riley said. I also went random with my freshman year roommate, and we also had a really positive relationship. And I think that like a big part of like being able to foster that positive relationship with the person that you're sharing your living space with is really just communication. And like any stories that I've heard of people who had less than positive relationships with their roommates, it usually does come back down to that issue of like of the communication style that exists between those two people. So yeah, communication is a really, really big thing.
Thank you. So Riley and Ferd, I know when we spoke a few months ago, we talked about like the concept of imposter syndrome, and that can manifest itself in several different ways. But it kind of goes to like a feeling of belonging or maybe questioning whether you belong in the space. So can you speak to that and how, if you encountered that feeling yourself and how you kind of got through that?
Yeah, so I think it's hard not to experience some form of imposter syndrome when you're new to a university, especially as a freshman. It is such a scary and overwhelming experience sometimes. So I definitely did experience a little bit of imposter syndrome. And one thing that helped me get through it was, first of all, understanding that a lot of my peers were going through the same thing. So knowing that you may feel like you're the only one who's feeling like the black sheep, like you don't belong at this university, but that's not necessarily true. Chances are, if you speak to some of your peers, they're going to be feeling the exact same way or sharing some of those anxieties. So really just even finding that community that I could be open and honest, that was one of my concerns, and like talking about it with other people and then learning that I'm not the only one going through that. That was something that really did help me to overcome the imposter syndrome. I would say, this is a little bit more specific to my school too, but extracurriculars are a really big thing at my university. And so at the beginning, it was a little bit hard because I was just a freshman and I wasn't necessarily involved in those extracurriculars either. So that kind of sometimes made it feel like the imposter syndrome was worse. But as throughout the year, as I got to know more people in those clubs and participate in those clubs as well and find those communities, I found that really did help to make it go away, and just to remind myself that like I do belong there and that there are people there who support me. So I think that a big part of it is community and finding people that will support you and getting involved, because when you can see yourself contributing to something within the university, or it makes you feel like you fit in more. And I think that really helped me to overcome that.
Absolutely. I also think that like, to speak personally, something that sort of helped me was like giving myself a lot of time when it came to like understanding my feelings about imposter syndrome. And like in understanding that like over time, like a student will learn how to trust themselves more and more and more. And then like a student will like learn how to have more and more faith in themselves, especially in how like they exist inside of a community. And like, I know something that like my academic advisor told me, I think honestly within my first few weeks at Northwestern, was that like every student at Northwestern is able to succeed at Northwestern, and that like there isn't a correct way to be a Northwestern student. So that like while all of our ideas of success might look very, very different, in the pursuit of like that idea of success, or that idea of like what it means to like belong in a community, being able to sort of trust that like you will figure things out, and being able to trust that sort of like that like you are where you are because you earned like your accomplishments, and you haven't arrived to where you've arrived just because of like a fluke or because of like a series of like lucky chances, that like you are absolutely capable of doing the things that you want to do, and being able to just sort of really have a lot of faith in that and have a lot of faith in yourself. That has been something that like at least like throughout the process of like my freshman year proved to be really, really helpful whenever the feeling of like feeling like an imposter sort of emerged itself.
Thank you. I love that. All right. Thanks both of you for sharing, because that's kind of a more personal thing. So Riley, when we were talking, it kind of piggybacks on that. You had a specific approach that you talked about when you were getting involved a little bit more slowly. So it kind of talks to that extracurriculars and how do you choose to get involved. But it also left to some feelings of you maybe feeling left out. So can you kind of talk about how you started getting involved in your school and that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that this is kind of a niche thing about the theater community that I'm a part of, but extracurriculars really are a big deal. And that became very clear to me the fall quarter of my freshman year. For example, the second week of school, I remember there were a bunch of auditions for a cappella groups and other different performance groups on campus. And I was feeling very overwhelmed at that point because I had just gotten there and I didn't necessarily want to audition for these groups if I didn't really understand what they were or what they were about or what kind of performances they put on. So I experienced a lot of like doubt and curiosity that fall quarter, I'd say. And I feel like I was a lot slower to get involved necessarily than a lot of my peers who, were auditioning for maybe that week. They had like 6 different auditions they were doing. They were trying all the different a cappella groups. And so that was a challenge for me because I felt like I wasn't doing enough to fit into my community. But I really did just have to, I think that a big part of it is knowing yourself and understanding yourself. And I knew that for me personally, it would suit me best to not jump right in, but to more observe, get to know and understand the different clubs and extracurriculars at my school, and then decide what I wanted to invest my time in. Especially because, this circles back to what Ali was saying earlier too, but it is a lot about time management, and no one's going to be there to like make sure you set your alarms or take care of yourself. So it was really important to me that what I was devoting my time to, and that it was stuff that I was really passionate about. So that was definitely a struggle for me fall quarter, because sure, we all started in this place of like, I was pretty convinced that, everyone kind of felt the same imposter syndrome that I did when we first got there. And then it became a little bit more challenging for me throughout fall quarter, when at the end, it seemed like other people maybe weren't experiencing that as much because they were more involved than I was. And so it was really just for me a matter of, letting things kind of develop and staying patient. And winter quarter and spring quarter, I continued to pursue some of the clubs I wanted to pursue that maybe didn't accept me right away or didn't take me in. And I continued to get involved with them in different ways. I tried to seek out a lot of different performances and to kind of understand the groups more so that I could have a better understanding of what I wanted to pursue. And, by the end of winter and spring quarter, I did feel much more involved. It was really, and I think that I don't regret anything at all, because for me, it did work out best. And knowing myself, I would not have enjoyed myself if I had dived right into something that maybe I didn't fully understand. And then suddenly I was in a club that demanded a bunch of time per week that I wasn't able to commit and wasn't passionate about. So it's really just like having faith that you know yourself best and doing what's best for you, even if it may not seem like it's what's necessarily best for everyone else, and sticking true to that, I think.
Cool. Thank you. Ferd, when we first talked a little while ago, you said something that I loved. You said, it's not your job to decide if you'll be good enough. And at the time you were talking about college admissions, but I feel that it also applies to taking risks in college. Can you speak to that concept a little bit and explain it a little bit more fully? And then I have a follow-up question for Riley too.
Yeah, of course. I think that like this is like definitely something that like does really apply to just like taking risks in college. I know like I think a sort of way that like I sort of imagine it is like, for example, as a theater major, I spend a lot of my time like going to auditions and like going to like, constantly like trying out for things. And something that like I sort of learned in the process of that was like understanding that like when it comes to like taking a risk or trying something new, it feels less helpful to me to think about like, how can I best prove to these other people that like I am good enough, and more like, how can I best like just enjoy my time in what I'm doing. So like when I think about like, for example, when I go into an audition, I try to think of it as like, it's not my goal to get the role. It's my goal to like have as much fun as I can possibly have the next 45 minutes. And really just like releasing this idea of wanting to prove how good you are, and rather just trusting that you already have everything that you need and that you already have everything that it takes to get the thing that you want. And rather just like tapping into the more like fun and the more exciting parts about taking a risk, rather than like the fear that's attached to it, which absolutely is much easier said than done, but like can also be really rewarding when you're able to sort of pull that off. But yeah, I do definitely think that is something that is totally attached to like taking risks. And there's also just like when you're able to sort of like release that desire to or like release that practice of deciding whether or not you're good enough for something before you even try it. You're also able to tap into like all of the fun, exciting things that you're able to learn about yourself just in the process of taking that risk. Even if like the thing you learn about yourself is that like, oh, I actually didn't like that. That's so valuable and that's so exciting. So yeah, for sure. It is definitely something that like, I think it is something that like can totally be connected to like being able to really empower yourself to take a risk, for sure.
Thank you for sharing that, because the first time you did, I thought that was really just really wise. So thank you. Riley, you did take risks as well. I mean, you were putting yourself out there for auditions and for, as you said, you had to try out, I guess, for some of the extracurricular activities. You kind of alluded to it in your last answer, but can you talk about when you were first not invited to join an extracurricular, how a little bit more about how you kind of pivoted and approached it the next time, like to stick with it kind of?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things I was looking at in fall was joining a theater board, which is a really rich part of the theater community on campus. And it's basically a bunch of students who work together to facilitate running student shows, student produced and student directed. And there's a bunch of different theater boards on our campus. And fall quarter, I was really mostly interested in one, and they focused on student written work. And it was something I was pretty passionate about. And you had to do this thing, which was called petitioning, but it was basically just like an interview. And the fall interviews are known for being like very kind of slim. They only let in like a few people. So, I interviewed for it and I was not accepted into the group. But I didn't quite give up because I know that I knew it would be hard to get in. I knew that there were a lot of really just like thoughtful, talented artists on our campus. So I didn't really want to discourage me. What I did end up doing throughout winter and spring quarters was get involved in their processes. I worked on one of their shows as an assistant director. I worked on another one as an assistant stage manager, where I was in the rehearsal room every day working with the cast and the team. And those both proved to be very rewarding processes, and I'm very glad that I worked on them. And then in spring, they held more petitions where they would accept another round of people, and they were still really the only theater group that I was interested in joining. And so I petitioned for them again. And at this point, I had more connections with some of the people on the board. I'd worked with them before. They knew more about me and my work ethic, and what I could bring to the table. And so I was accepted onto that board, and now I'm one of the co-technical directors on that group, which is really exciting. And it's really just about, don't be discouraged if maybe something doesn't go how you want it. I know that not all clubs at different universities work quite like they do at Northwestern, but really this goes for any school experience. I think don't be discouraged by any of your failures. Just because like you're not a part of something in the way you think you want to be a part of it doesn't mean that you can't participate in other ways. And, that could lead to something really great and really beautiful in the end. So just continue to like make those connections and don't give up on yourself. Keep trying if things don't go as you initially planned.
Thank you. All right, great. Thanks for sharing that, both of you. Allie, you've been so patient. I'm going to pivot back to you. You, in your first answer or second answer, were talking about mental health services, and that is such a critical issue, especially I think in this kind of post-pandemic limbo world that we live in. So can you talk a little bit about the mental health toll that you see and what students can maybe anticipate, and kind of just talk about those struggles and normalize it a little bit for us, I guess.
Definitely. So all of the challenges that I talked about earlier, the challenges like imposter syndrome, like not always getting the things that you want right away that Riley and Ferd have talked about, all of those can absolutely take a toll on your mental health. Again, college is pretty much your whole world changes in an instant, which is incredible and so much fun, but it's a lot to take in all at once. And that can absolutely take a toll on your mental health. I talk to students every single day who are telling me that college has been a challenge for their mental health, that there were things they weren't expecting, things they weren't prepared for, that now they're having a hard time dealing with. So I would say a few things to definitely be aware of that can have an impact on your mental health are things like, again, you're away from home for the first time. And whether you are a mile away from home or 1,000 miles away, it still can be a little bit lonely. And there are still times where you might feel like you're not ready for it, like you don't necessarily have the support that you might have had at home. That can be challenging. There are also things like you are meeting a lot of new people. For most people, you are essentially starting from scratch and creating all new social groups, all of that stuff. And that takes a lot of physical, mental, emotional energy. And it can be pretty overwhelming sometimes. So you are building your own community. You have the chance to almost reinvent yourself, to start from scratch. And all of that can be hard. A lot of my students will tell me that they feel like they lost a lot of their identity when they started college. Like maybe, in high school, they were in clubs and played sports and had all of these different sources of community. And then they went to college and no longer had a lot of those things. And some of them start to question, who am I when I'm not playing this and doing this? And that can be really, really difficult. So those are some of the main challenges that I hear about from students. And the first thing that I tell them every single time is this is 100% normal. And honestly, I would be more worried if you weren't struggling with any of this, because that would mean you weren't doing anything here. So I think it's so important to know that every single person on your campus is going through a lot of these same things. So again, it is normal. It's hard at first. It doesn't stay hard forever. So if you can get through the first couple weeks, if you can put yourself out there, even when it's really scary and you would rather just lock yourself in your dorm room, it gets so much easier and so much more fun. But definitely you are not alone if your first couple weeks aren't all fun and happy and great. I think a lot of students come in with the expectation that it's kind of the Hollywood version of college, where you meet 100 new friends on day one and everything is perfect. And if it doesn't go that way, it's easy to feel like you did something wrong. So truly, there are going to be hard days. There are going to be times when you might be like, should I be here? What am I doing here? Did I make a mistake? That's normal. You're human. And it's a challenging transition. But the more you can just remember everybody goes through that, I think the easier it can be. And Riley touched on this earlier, but the more willing you are to open up, even if it's, telling your roommate like, hey, are you feeling a little stressed? Because I'm feeling super stressed. A lot of times, especially in something like college, no one wants to be the first one to admit that things are hard. But once one person opens up, it's amazing how suddenly everybody else is like, oh yeah, hey, me too. So I have my students the first day of a class that I teach for our first year students, I have them close their eyes and raise their hand if they've felt overwhelmed, stressed, scared since they started. Every single hand goes up, and then have them open their eyes. And you can just see their faces that at first they're shocked that everybody else felt that way too. And then that shock just turns to relief of like, oh, it's not just me. So I think the more open you can be with other people, you will then get that same openness and honesty in return. And feeling like you're not the only one going through this can make such a huge difference.
Awesome. Thank you, Allie, for that. Did you have anything in there that you wanted to add, Ferd or Riley? Let me know. Or
I'll just say briefly, for me, it was definitely a change of pace to suddenly be living in the same place of my school and to kind of have those two worlds collide, especially coming off of a gap year where I was at home and coming off of a gap year that was post-pandemic where we were also very socially isolated. I consider myself pretty introverted, but I also obviously wanted to be making friends. And I remember orientation, schools will really have a lot of different programs and things to get you meeting people, which is really great. But I did notice that like my social battery was getting drained those first few weeks, but I still felt the pressure to like keep up the face and like be out and meeting people, which is important and you should be doing. But it was just for me a matter of also like reminding myself that it's okay to take a night in. It's okay to be doing my laundry. you have to do your laundry at some point. You shouldn't have FOMO for doing your laundry when other people are out, like hanging out one night. It's one night of doing laundry. But just remembering to like take care of myself that way, and kind of controlling that FOMO of like, it's the beginning of your college experience. You're going to have so many other experiences. It's okay if you're not out meeting people right now because you have been the whole 2 weeks, you know? So for me, it was just reminding myself of that and being forgiving with myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like something that really honestly changed the way I look at my own wellness and like my own mental health is just like one, being able to like treat and speak to myself as if I were like my own friend, like treat myself as a friend. But then also being able to just like look out for myself, even if it means like the most simple of things. So like, even if that means that like if I eat food, if I drink water, if I sleep, that is a successful day. You know what I mean? Like being able to like being able to set very like attainable, very easy, very simple, very gentle goals for myself of just how to best take care of myself. Like not only did I notice that like that like one made it easier for me to just like move throughout my day, but it also just like better, like more informed like the relationship that I have with myself, and like just the amount of compassion that I held for myself in addition to that.
Awesome. Thank you both for sharing that. Switching over really quickly to academics again, were there any differences between high school and college that caught you off guard? Did you find it hard to manage your time well? Did you have to find new strategies? Kind of speak to maybe the academic side for just a sec.
I think that for me, I think that Ali spoke on this earlier too, but in college, the biggest shift for me was that a lot of work is done outside the class. So if you're just showing up to class, you know, you may still feel like you're behind, and that was kind of something I had to get used to. So for me, it was a matter of managing my time so that I could also put in the outside hours into my classes in order to understand the material and really do well with it. Because that's something that's a little bit different than high school. You know, you have homework, but it's definitely moves at a faster pace in college, and you're kind of expected to keep up. So it's a matter of setting time aside for yourself or going to the professors if you need help, taking advantage of your TAs. And that all really helped me when I was adjusting.
Another thing, like I know I was told probably a million times that like I have found is very much the truth is that like a class at like 8 a.m. in high school is very different from a class that's 8 a.m. in college. Like that is something that like I was told a million times and is 100% true for a fact. Very cool. Especially if you're someone who like maybe if an early morning isn't your ideal situation. I'm speaking about myself here. That was something that like I definitely like found to be true and was honestly surprised to the extent to which it was true, for sure.
So explain that a little bit more. When you say it's not the same thing, do you just mean it's harder to stay engaged at 8 a.m. in college?
Well, yes. I also like the process of, at least speaking personally, like it blows my mind, like the time at which I woke up during high school versus the time at which I wake up like at college. So like whenever I have like a class, when like this past quarter I had a class that was like at 9 a.m. every single Monday. And like I knew for like that class, like every Sunday night I had to like set myself up for success for that 9 a.m. class, meaning that like I knew I had to be in bed by a certain time. I had to like make sure that like everything that I needed for that class was already lined up, so that like I could honestly wake up, brush my teeth, get dressed, and then be ready, be like set up to already hit the ground running when it came to that next morning. But yeah, for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So a lot of pre-planning needed. All right. Moving on to, I guess, a little bit lighter note, unless you have anything that you want to add. I was going to move into like dorm room stuff just for a minute, because I know a lot of people that are moving into dorm rooms, there's like myriad lists of all the things you should buy. They're usually put out there by stores that want you to buy them at their store, and so forth. So Jenny, do you want me to share my screen, or should you share that?
I can do it. I was actually just texting you or chatting with you to ask you if you wanted me to. Okay, so let me make sure I have it up. So we want the
I think it's the College Board one. So we chose a list that is not affiliated with a store. It's still pretty extensive. And Riley and for Allie too, because you were not too very long ago living in a dorm yourself. Maybe you can chime in and just share what you really thought was essential, what was a waste of time or money, I guess, in this case, since you didn't really need to have it. There we go. And then maybe if we can make it a little bigger. Can y'all?
I'm not sure. Let me see.
Or just maximize your screen, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm not entirely certain how to do because I don't do it very often. So, hold on. Let me stop share while I figure that out real quick.
So in the meantime, is there something like a must-have item, Riley, Ferd, or Allie? Or a handful of must-have items? Or like, I bought this and I did not use it once, brought this?
Yeah, I think that like, this is something that like, I know a lot of students are told, and I'm very, very grateful that like, a power strip. So it's like a strip that has multiple outlets that you plug into a wall. That is just like such a lifesaver. Like it's so wildly convenient and so helpful. And then another thing that like I personally wish that I had my freshman year was like a Brita water filter. My dorm, like on my floor, there wasn't like a water fountain. So in order to go get water, I'd have to go all the way down to the first floor. So unfortunately that meant that just like my freshman year, I didn't drink that much water unless I was in a dining hall. So like every time that like I went to one of my friends' dorms who had a Brita filter, I was like, this is amazing. This is perfect. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I hear a Brita water filter and extension, or actually not just an extension cord, but like a long power cord that you can plug things in as essentials. Does anyone else have essentials to add?
For me, it was really important that I had like different types of lighting, like a desk lamp, and I also brought like some fairy lights for home. And that was more of like a mental wellness thing for me as well, because the last thing I wanted in the cold Chicago winter was to come home at 4 p.m. when it's dark and then be under a harsh kind of fluorescent light for the rest of the night. So if you're someone who cares about that and who knows that maybe you don't want that kind of harsh dorm lighting, having just like different lighting options was always really helpful to me. And it really just made the difference between like actually being able to relax and feel at home in my own room versus like feeling just more stressed out about it.
Okay. Did you bring anything that you never used that was kind of a worthless thing to bring?
I brought a steamer that I never used, but I feel like I'll use it in the future. So I don't want to say it's useless. I just never ended up using it. And I was packing up my dorm at the end of the year and I was like, wow, it's still in its packaging. But, you know, I think it's still nice to have a steamer because you never know if you have an interview or you need to look nice for something. Definitely easier than to have like a whole ironing board. So I wouldn't say get rid of the steamer, but that was kind of funny. I noticed I never used it in the end.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
A few that I would add to the things I didn't realize I needed until I got there and then had to make an emergency run to Target list. One big one, if your dorm is like mine was, where it has communal bathrooms, some kind of flip-flops, shower shoes, something like that, absolute essential. Those floors are a little questionable. So definitely flip-flops will be a lifesaver. I would also say for me, this wasn't an essential, but it made my dorm room so much happier, was getting a big rug because we had extremely cold floors. It was tile and I went to college in Iowa and in the winter it was so cold and you'd walk in and just freeze instantly, and having somewhere warm to sit, to walk on made a huge difference just for our kind of mental health. So that was a nice one. I definitely second the power strip. That will be the best investment you ever make.
Awesome. Thank you. This is one of the resources that we will send to participants a link to, so you can kind of peruse it and look and see what you actually need. I think both Riley and Ferd might attest to the fact that less might be more. Your dorm room is not going to be that big, and you don't want to bring your entire contents of your room with you. Okay, and then we'll open it up for questions in just a minute, but I also want to give Ali and Ferd and Riley, excuse me, a chance to add anything that has been missed or not touched on, or any other topics that they think that students should know. And please do feel free to either raise your hand if you have a question for them specifically, or put it in the chat. Either option works great. Okay.
I think if there's like one thing that like I wish I knew before I like went to college. This is like probably very cliche, but I think it's that like in the process of like going into college and like integrating yourself into like the community that exists at your school, it's very, very possible for like your understanding of who you are and like how you exist in the world to like either expand or like completely change, or for like the concept of like who you thought you were to be challenged. And like I wish I could just tell myself from a year ago anything, it would just be like that, like that is something that is like absolutely natural and absolutely normal, and even something to like even be welcomed to a certain extent. So like being able to find like peace and being able to like find joy in like this really exciting opportunity to learn so much about yourself in honestly a very short amount of time, that can be something that can like be really, really exciting if you allow it to be, for sure.
Thank you.
I mean, yeah, I think that Ferd kind of phrased everything that I was thinking very nicely, but just to, be forgiving to yourself. Your freshman year may not turn out exactly as you imagine it at the beginning of the year. At the end of the year, maybe looking back and thinking, that kind of went differently than I planned. But really just like embracing the change, putting yourself out there to meet all kinds of people. In college, you're going to be exposed to a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds, and really just embracing that. Meeting as many people as you can, taking care of yourself, and just being kind to yourself. If you're maybe struggling at first, if you are changing, if your understanding of yourself is growing or expanding, just be open to all of that. I think that's my biggest piece of advice.
Great. Thank you, Riley. And then Ali, I know you had emailed me a couple last like takeaways. So we're going to show the PowerPoint again in just a moment, and we'll get to, I think if we go to slide 4, we're on 5.5. Okay. So this checklist, actually, can we go back to slide 5 before we get to Ali's? I apologize. So there is also a couple things that people should be aware of. If we open up that Grown and Flown blog checklist in a window, I think it's up in your screen in the Off to College, right where your mouse is.
This would have to stop sharing because it won't let me select it because the tabs are right by the pop-up.
Oh, okay. You want me to try?
No. Let me just move over to it. And let me also see about, it's going to, here, let me also make it a little bigger. There we go. Okay. There we go.
Thank you. Perfect. All right. Sorry to jump around a little bit. This is one checklist that I forgot to mention before I asked for some last thoughts, but it's a pretty good, this is a blog that is really designed for parents. However, it has a lot of pieces to it that sometimes can get easily forgotten in the excitement of going to college. things that Ali has touched on about finding mental health providers, both at your campus and nearby, if you know the resources, but if you know that you're going to need them, especially doctors, how to get your contacts. These are things that will be so much more helpful if you kind of look into in advance. If we scroll down a little bit more, there's things about legal documents that is easily forgotten. But if you are over 18, you're an adult. And that means that if something happens and you need somebody to speak on your behalf for your medical care, HIPAA is a law that is your medical privacy, and you need to sign a paper that would allow a medical provider to give that information to a parent or a guardian or another safe adult or trusted person in your life. So those are things that you should think about as well. This list also has some move-in details, some academic details that you might want to think about, and other things that you might want to consider bringing to campus. So definitely take a look at that. We will, social media. Ali, I know that you mentioned this to me when we spoke about following groups that you were interested in. Do you want to speak to that real quick?
Definitely. So nowadays, almost all clubs, events, activities, everything that's happening on campus, the main way that they're communicating it is through social media. So I know at least at Purdue, Instagram is king. That is what everybody uses. So there are other ways. If you're somebody who doesn't have social media, they should have websites. They often will have flyers hung up around campus. So there are definitely ways to still stay connected. But if you do use social media, even before you get to campus, I think it's a really great idea to start following any teams, any clubs, anything you think you might be interested in joining, both to get a feel for the group and the activities that they do, and also so that once you get to campus, you know how to connect with them.
Great, thank you so much. This checklist will also kind of talk about some of the financial considerations, how to create talking about creating a budget. A lot of kids these days use Venmo to pay each other back for things. So just kind of starting to look into those things. All right, so now let's go back to the slideshow, and we will send a link to this resource as well. And if we go back to the PowerPoint, we'll get to Ali's takeaways. There we go. Thank you. All right, I'm going to let you take it away, Ali.
Perfect. So limiting this to just 5 was very, very difficult. And I think every single thing that Riley and Ferd have said could be added to this list. Absolutely. But a few that I hear all the time from students and from my own experience, the number one piece of advice I would give is don't be afraid to ask for help. I know that is much easier said than done. And to a certain extent, we all like to think that we can figure it out on our own, especially when you're going off to college. You're thinking, I'm independent, I'm an adult, I'm doing this. It can be really hard to admit that you need help. But the smartest, best students that I know are the ones that take advantage of every tutoring session and office hours, all the chances to get help and support, they are there. So truly asking for help doesn't mean that you aren't capable of handling it. It means that you're smart enough to recognize there are people who can help you handle it better. Again, we've touched on this a couple of times, but there are so many resources available, but they're usually not going to reach out directly to you. So it's going to be up to you to seek them out and take advantage of them. So the more research you can do before you arrive to know what those resources are, the better and the easier it will be for you to connect with them. Again, college can be tough. It's amazing, but it can be tough mentally, physically, emotionally. So make sure you are prioritizing yourself. It can be so easy with classes, with social commitments, with clubs. It's amazing how fast the day goes. And a lot of times you might get to the end of the day and realize you haven't taken 3 minutes to just take a breath and be with yourself for a minute. So make sure you are making yourself a priority, whatever that looks like to you. And then you are not alone. This transition is challenging for everyone. It looks different for everyone, but no one adapts to it without any challenge whatsoever. So just understand, whenever you're having a tough day, things aren't feeling quite like you thought they were going to, that is totally normal. You are absolutely not alone. And last but not least, you do not have to have everything figured out from the day you step on campus. It might feel like you do. I know I definitely did. The first day of my first year, I thought I had to have my entire life planned out. And I look back now on what 18-year-old me thought that plan was, and it's kind of hilarious. Nothing at all like what actually happened. So you do not have to know everything right away. And college is meant for you to explore, to try the things, and maybe something you thought you would love, you actually hate, and something you never thought you'd enjoy becomes your new passion. So allow yourself to be open to those new experiences, because you will definitely find some surprising things that you really love.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allie. Let's see, we have one last slide, but I'm not sure it's super critical. I want to just make sure if there's any last questions that you have an opportunity to ask them. We will send you an email with a link to the PDFs of the resources we've highlighted in the last few minutes. Probably sooner than August 9th, but no later than August 9th. So please be on the lookout for that. It will go to the email that you registered with. And then if we go ahead and take it off screen share, so maybe the screen will show all of our participants. I just want to give one last shout out and thank you to our panelists, Allie, yay, and Ferd, thank you so much, and Riley. We really appreciate your honesty and your candor in sharing your personal experiences with us and kind of how you navigated those challenges. And I know y'all aren't that old, but you have a lot of wisdom to share, and I super appreciate it. And Allie, your expertise in your new role as a college, or I always say college, as a student success coach, it's been really invaluable. And I hope that our attendees today and ones that might watch this recording will really benefit from it. So thank you all for your time.
Can I add something that I forgot to talk about too?
Yes, of course.
I was just going to briefly touch on Allie's last bullet point reminded me of this. And it was about, exploring different things that you're passionate about. And one thing that I would say is don't be afraid to take classes that maybe are new to you or that you don't think that you would initially be interested in. I did not go into college intending to double major, but my fall quarter, I was in the car driving to college, and I had to do my class registration at the same time, and a lot of classes were filling up, and I got a spot in this Russian literature class randomly, and it was one of my favorite classes I took all year, and got me thinking about how much I like reading and working with literature. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to declare an English major. So sometimes it's a random class too that will help to kind of dictate the rest of your course on college, but don't be afraid to take a random class, because you might explore some things that you didn't know you were passionate about until you even tried it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. No, I appreciate that. Always jump back in. All right. Any last questions before we close? It's just a few minutes early, but I think we were going to run till 7:15. So, all right. Oh, yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm pretty interested in like peer-to-peer, sort of like working with another peer at some point. Is that something you would recommend? And also, I've heard that one of the best ways to like stay motivated if you're feeling a little less motivated is to like give advice to someone. And that can like really help like keep strong motivation. I guess I just wanted to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm going to let our panelists jump in with those answers.
I can start here. So first of all, I think that is some of the best advice you could have ever been given. It's so true that those peer-to-peer connections, as well as being able to be in a position to give other people advice, is such a great way to help yourself too. Because I think a lot of times, like Ferd said earlier, sometimes we talk about ourselves and to ourselves so differently than we talk to other people, that sometimes the advice we're giving to someone else is really what we need to hear too, but it's a lot easier to tell it to another person. So absolutely, I think putting yourself in a position to be able to offer advice and guidance to others is one of the best ways when you might be struggling to help kind of get out of that rut. So a couple of things that I would recommend looking into potentially, a lot of colleges will have some sort of peer mentoring program, and that will look different depending on the school. A lot of times that will involve either something with orientation or something where they'll have first year students get connected to upper class students. So I would say definitely seek that out both as a first year and then later on, if it's something that you enjoy, definitely look into volunteering as a peer mentor to then help other people with that same transition. It is such an empowering thing. Those connections are just amazing. I hear stories all the time about students who met with a peer mentor and that was their person on campus. And that was the person who made them feel like they belonged. So it can be such a powerful thing to be on both sides of that. And a lot of times those peer mentoring programs will come through different departments. So if you are, say, a business major, I would reach out to that department to see if they offer any sort of program like that, because a lot of them do. But definitely that is such a great spot or great place to start.
I think also to add a bit onto that, I'm not a peer mentor at my school, but I am a tour guide. And like, I think that like in the process of being able to like, in the process of sharing wisdom or sharing just information, at least personally, like something that being a tour guide has like changed my relationship to my school, just because like I've been able to surprise myself with like the wisdom that I have that maybe I didn't realize that I had, or I've been able to just surprise myself with like realizing that like, oh, I do actually really like this part of my school way more than I realized that I had. So in addition to that, like I think that like really being able to speak with people and really being able to like really speak very openly about your own experiences and being able to like use those to help others can be a really, really like enriching experience. But yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely just a bump on everything they said. Really do like take advantage of your peer, our peer advisors is what they were called at my school, and even the other people my age who are in the same peer advisor group. I'm still really close with a lot of them, and it's a really wonderful thing because it is just like a shared experience that you get to kind of have with all those folks, and they are there for you, and it's a wonderful kind of community to immerse yourself in at the beginning for sure.
Cool, thanks. And Malachi, I didn't want to cut you off. Did you have something that you wanted to ask again or say, or you're good? Okay. All right. Well, I think if that is the last of our questions, then thank you all so much for coming. I hope that this has been a valuable experience. I hope that you've learned a little bit that gives you the confidence that you can really just take it from here and feel really good about your start to college in the fall. So thank you all for being here, and thanks once again to our panelists.